Hey, hello, I'm Ed Walsh, and this is Song for This Day. And if you're returning from a previous adventure, thanks for coming back. And if this is your first time with us, well, you know what they say, you always remember your first time. So what we do here is we look for your favorite songs, or maybe mine, or both of them, we hope, and then we do a deep dive into their lyrics and information, tell some interesting stories about them, some anecdotes, some funny stuff, we hope as well too. And we turn it all into a rock and roll stew today because I'm here in the kitchen again. It's not actually going to be a stew because I don't cook that well, and we're going to really be making kind of a smoothie. So, we're going to start with not some milk. We're going to start with no milk today, and that, of course, is going to be brought to us by Herman and His Hermits. Now, you'll likely remember that song by Herman and His Hermits, and the Herman part, we'll get to that in just a bit. But it of course, is Peter Noone, and he did No Milk Today, which was a big, kind of quirky hit, and we're going to do no milk because we have no milk. We're going to use water today, and it's going to substitute for milk. And you'll see why at the end. He says, hopefully. So we're going to put some water, measuring very accurately. Yeah, that should do it. No, a little bit more. Okay. If you'd like, I'll keep up to date on what's going into this, so you'll be aware of what's happening with it as well. So, Herman's Hermits. Herman, well, Peter Noone. The members of the Heartbeats, that was the original name for the band, they thought that Peter Noone looked like Herman Munster from the TV series The Munsters. And they started calling him Herman, and it stuck. And Herman's Hermits just kind of flowed together. Now, Herman's Hermits had 20 charting hits, 12 top 10 hits, and a number of number ones, and they sold 60 million records. They were a big deal. But are they in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? No, they're not. Did you ever wonder what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is all about? I do, all the time. You know, when you think about the sports halls of fame, they are based on statistics and facts and records. And yeah, there's some voting involved, but they're based on information. That doesn't seem to pertain to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because when you have a group that has as many hits as Herman and His Hermits and sold 60 million records, you would think they'd be there. But they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and most likely never will be. But you know what? They're in good company. You know who else is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? The Guess Who, Badfinger, Jay Giles Band, the Carpenters, Boston, Grand Funk Railroad, America, Paul Revere and the Raiders, Styx, Jethro Tull, Three Dog Night, Harry Nilsson, the Monkees, and so many, many others. So you really have to worry about the criteria, don't you? No, let's not worry about it. We have other things to worry about. So I always kind of think about where band names come from. And of course, Herman and His Hermits come from the TV series, The Munsters. And today, the song for this day, No Milk Today, was written by Graham Gouldman. Now, you may not know the name Graham Gouldman, but you know his music. He wrote For Your Love, Heart Full of Soul, Evil Hearted You. Those are for the Zombies. Big hits, all of them. He wrote No Milk Today and Listen People for Herman's Hermits. Both #1 hits. He also wrote Bus Stop, Look Through Any Window for the Hollies. Again, big hits. Graham Gouldman, he wrote all of those before he was 19 years old. Yikes. Well done. And then he formed his own group called 10cc. And in a world of how did they come up with the name for that band, I'm going to leave it to you to search that one out, 10cc's, because it's a very kind of colorful way that they came upon it. And he wrote for that band, I'm Not in Love, The Things We Do for Love, and Dreadlock Holiday. All right, we're going to add a little lemon. About that much would be good, I think. You might want to slice it, but I think we're going to get an additional flavor and taste out of the entire lemon. And you know where we're getting this lemon from? We're getting it from the Lemon Pipers. You remember them? They had that interesting hit called Green Tambourine. Ah, yes. You remember Green Tambourine? So on the record, in addition to the titular Green Tambourine, there were also guitars, bass guitars, drums, orchestral strings, and a thing called a vibraclap. It didn't clap, though. And you're thinking, wait, what? A vibraclap, what is that? Well, it's actually a percussion instrument akin to a jawbone, and when you clap it together, it makes a vibrating sound. Next time you hear Green Tambourine, think about that, and you'll hear that little vibraclap. You can impress your friends and say, hey, did you hear that vibraclap? And they'll say, what the heck is he talking about? Okay, so Bill Bartlett, he was the guitarist, and he did some of the vocals in Green Tambourine with the fabulous Lemon Pipers. He would go on to front the group known as Ram Jam, and they would have one of my, not favorite songs, one of my favorite songs that shouldn't be on the radio, and it was called Black Betty. Oh, Black Betty, ram-a-lam, oh, Black Betty, ram-a-lam, Black Betty had a child, ram-a-lam, the damn child went blind. That shouldn't be on the radio, really, should it? I don't think so. Green Tambourine. The lyrics are written by Shelley Prinz, and the music was written by Paul Leka. Again, a name you might not be familiar with, but we're going to loop him into something you are very, very familiar with, because Paul Leka, who wrote the music for Green Tambourine, he also wrote the music for a song called Na Na Na, Hey Hey, Kiss 'Em Goodbye. Now, you've heard that song before, right? And it was recorded by a group called Steam, but there was no group called Steam. It was just Paul Leka and Gary DiCarlo and a bunch of studio musicians. And they needed to come up with a song for the B-side of a record that was going to be released by the band. You remember records, 45s, A-side, B-side, and the A-side was the hit, and the B-side, well, it was filler, you know, kind of throwaway stuff. It just needed something on the back of it. And Na 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 Hey Hey was on the back of a song called Sweet Laura Lee. So it got released. The DJs put it on, they listened to Sweet Laura Lee, and they said, whoa, no, 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 no. This is not a hit. And they flipped it over, and they heard Na 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 Hey Hey. And they said, that's a hit. And of course, it became a huge hit. It became a #1 hit. It became a stadium staple in sporting events around the world even today. Now, Tommy Mottola, who at one time was a chairman of Sony Music and was also married to Mariah Carey, he claims to have sung some of the backing vocals in Kiss Him Goodbye. So next time you hear the record, listen and see if you can find Tommy Mottola in there. Now, Paul Leka also produced and arranged music for artists like Harry Chapin, The Left Bank, and REO Speedwagon. But back to Green Tambourine. Now, perhaps we could call it an early psychedelic trip. Perhaps we could just call it a novelty, well-produced tune. But it focused mostly on a non-musical instrument, a percussion instrument, a tambourine, green or otherwise. So we'll leave it with just a little bit of blue tambourine. All right, could you hear that fade on the Green Tambourine song? Okay, we're gonna do Raspberries, not this one. No, we're gonna use real raspberries. They are, can you see those beautiful real raspberries? We're gonna do raspberries, and I didn't know this, and maybe you did. When I was doing research on this, raspberries apparently come from the rose family. Not the rose family maybe in real estate, but the rose flower family. And not only are they in red, but they come in black, purple, and yellow. And they're known for their sweet taste, and they're high in vitamin C, and they also have low in sugar, making them nutritious, delicious. You can add them in salads. You can add them in yogurt. You can add them in smoothies. There's a smoothie here. I'm going to move this over here so you can see it. There you go. Making it there. Okay. They grow on canes. I didn't know that either, and they're best stored in the refrigerator. I learned that from personal experience. The first raspberries I bought, they got a little furry because I didn't put them in the refrigerator. So there's a kitchen tip from Song for This Day. When you get your raspberries, put them in the refrigerator. Okay. Our connect, however, is the Raspberries from Cleveland, Ohio. Wally Bryson, Jim Branford, and of course, the very famous Eric Carmen, who wrote most of the songs and sang them for the Raspberries. And they did stuff like Let's Pretend, Tonight, Overnight Sensation, and a wonderful song that was initially banned by most radio stations, Go All the Way. Remember that one? Yes, you do. Now, Eric Carmen, who wrote that, he said he wanted to specifically write a sexually explicit song, and boy, did he ever do that. But if you listen to the lyrics, it's got an interesting take to it, because you would think it's the singer who's saying to his girlfriend, we'll say, please, baby, let's go all the way. But it actually goes the other way. We have his girlfriend saying, please, let's go all the way. Does that ever happen? I don't know. Maybe it does. This song was included on the soundtrack for Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a great soundtrack. 70s music, if you like 70s music, you need to listen to this because it's great. So great, as a matter of fact, that they did a second version of it. So after the Raspberries, the guitarist, Wally Bryson, he joined a group called Photomaker. You may not have heard from them. They didn't have any charting hits, but they're kind of a big deal. Atlantic Records was pushing them as a super power pop trio. And the interesting part, for me anyway, was that they were comprised of not only Wally Bryson, but members of the Rascals. We had Dino Danelli, the world's most underrated great drummer, and, of course, the famous Gene Cornish, who played guitar as well, too. All right. You know, when I'm cooking at home, I usually drink wine. So while I'm cooking here, I'm going to have just a touch, and I'm going to be sure and careful not to spill the wine. And, of course, you know where we're going here. Spill the Wine. It was a song by Eric Burden and War. And, you know, whenever I listen to it, it's a fun song, you know. Mostly it's a talking song with Eric talking his way through a strange, mysterious trip or dream. And I always mistook this one lyric that was in the song where he says, spill the wine, take this girl. No, he doesn't say that. He says, spill the wine, take this pearl. Now, in interviews, he's tried to clear it up and say that what he intended was to have this reference, pearl, to the ladies in the song, because he goes on to say, in the song, there's every kind of girl. There are big ones, tall ones, short ones, brown ones, big ones, crazy ones. So he said that was the pearl. Others have suggested it may have a sexual connotation, or it may even have a drug relation. So in the background of that song, you may remember this, there's some talking going on in a foreign language, almost gibberish. And I always wondered what it was. Turns out it's Spanish, and this was the best translation that I could find for it. And it goes like this: I'm here, but I'm not here. I know my body is here, but my head is out there flying out there. I'm right here with my buddies, my friends, whatever you want to call them, my scene. Say hello to them. I guess in some universe that might make sense. Not to me, though. All right, Spill the Wine. It was the only hit, really, for Eric Burden and War. War would go on, though, and they would have a good career, as we'll call them, a solo artist. And they would record songs and have hits with Slipping Into Darkness, The World is a Ghetto, and The Cisco Kid. You know, when I was a kid, not a Cisco kid, I loved to watch The Cisco Kid. I don't know why. You know, there's so many Westerns on TV. This was just one of them that captivated me when I was a really youngster. And I think it caught me because they had this signature sign-off at the end of each of the episode where the two characters would go, oh, Cisco, oh, Pancho. I don't even know what happened before that, but I always laughed at that. I'd like to see that again sometime. Anyway, Cisco Kid, it actually made a big hit as far as war was concerned. So here we go. Next up, we're going to have A Taste of Honey. And it pours so slowly, so I'm going to talk while it's pouring. And this, of course, is going to relate to Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass and their song, A Taste of Honey. And honey, of course, comes from bees. You know that. And weirdly, it's been around since ancient Egypt. And in ancient Egypt, they used it for sweetening things, obviously. But apparently, they also use it for burials, sometimes burying people in honey or just with honey. The previous one sounds a little weird. Okay, so I got the honey in there. Herb Alpert, a very, very interesting man. You might think he was Spanish because most of his early songs had a mariachi touch to them. But his parents were actually Jewish immigrants, so go figure. He was an amazing musician and also a remarkable businessman. In fact, he has recorded 28 albums that have appeared on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100, 5 of them which reached #1, and he's been awarded 14 platinum and 14 gold albums. And here's the remarkable thing. Herb Alpert had 4 top 10 albums at the same time. In the same period, he had 4 of the top 10 albums that were there. And he met Jerry Moss. Jerry Moss and Herb Alpert, they formed a record company called Alpert, A&M, which of course was Alpert and Moss. And their premise was they were going to create a record label that was, in fact, favorable to artists. Most record labels at the time, they didn't care about artists. They just wanted money, money, money. But these guys cared about artists. And as a result, they wound up attracting a lot of artists. Artists, for instance, like Cat Stevens, Joe Cocker, Procol Harum, Humble Pie, Fairport Convention, Free, Spooky Tooth, Carole King, Rick Wakeman, Ozark Mountain Daredevils, Chuck Mangione, Squeeze, Peter Frampton, The Police, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, Suzanne Vega, Oingo Boingo, Quincy Jones, Bryan Adams, Amy Grant. Well, you get the idea. When you treat the artists well, they will come to you. And they did. There's a great documentary about Herb Alpert. It's called Herb Alpert Is, done in 2020. And it presents him as not only a great musician, he is, in fact, the only artist who has had a #1 song as a singer, This Guy's in Love with You, and also an instrumental, which was Rise. So, we're moving on. Blueberries. These are blueberries. These are special blueberries because they come from the hill. So where are we going here? Obviously. Blueberry Hill with Fats Domino. We're doing it. Blueberry Hill. The song Blueberry Hill, and let me just mention this first about blueberries because I was astounded. Blueberries, of course, are a super fruit. And why? Because they have such nutritional value to them. And one of the biggest values is that they're great for the brain. And it has been shown in tests with animals and humans that regular consumption of blueberries will increase your brain abilities by 2.5 years. Mostly good for old people. We'll have some blueberries that are in there. Fats Domino, he knew the Blueberry Hill song from a recording that Louis Armstrong did in 1949. But the song originated in a movie in 1940, and that movie was called The Singing Hill. I don't know. And the song was presented initially by the singing cowboy, Gene Autry. He recorded the song, Fats Domino, much against his producer's suggestion. His producer said, this has been done too many times, and we don't need to do it again. But Fats Domino, he took it and he put his own personality on it, his famous piano triplets, and a Cajun accent, and it would be his biggest hit, and a very big hit. Antoine Fats Domino, he placed 37 songs in the U.S. Top 40. That's more than Elvis did at the time. He sold more records than Elvis. He sold more records than Frank Sinatra. He sold more records than anyone back in the 60s. He sold 65 million records. And we remember Blueberry Hill with Richie Cunningham from Happy Days because every time he got a date, he would sing, I found my thrill. I don't know if he ever did. The Beatles, Elton John, Billy Joel, and Randy Newman, they've all said they've been influenced by Fats Domino. Paul McCartney said that Lady Madonna copies those triplets that Fats Domino played. And Ray Manzarek of The Doors, interestingly, he said that the bass line in Light My Fire is lifted from Blueberry Hill. All right. I'm going to tell you this. You're not going to believe me. I'm going to say that right up front. But this is true. I checked it. I watched it. I checked it again. I watched it again. I made sure it wasn't AI. But back in 2010, there was an interesting guest artist at a celebrity on TV charity event that was held in Russia who sang Blueberry Hill in English and live. And that singer's name was Vladimir Putin. Let me say it again. Vladimir Putin. Indeed, he did that. You need to Google it. I promise you'll be entertained and you'll say to yourself, why didn't the man stick to singing instead of destroying the freaking world? Anyway, he didn't. All right, go with me now. You're not gonna think this makes sense, but here we go. Prunes. You remember the electric prunes? Probably not. Who does, really? Interestingly, prunes, the name prunes, you know what they are, they're dried plums. And they're delicious. You can't eat a lot of them because if you do, you can't be in the company of others afterwards, and you know why. But prunes, the name, it comes from the French word for plum, which is prune, which suggests that the French are probably very confused and they're trying to get either plums or prunes, and the guy doesn't know which they're asking for because they keep saying prune. They want the prune, huh? Bring me the prune. Okay. The band, the Electric Prunes, there they are there, they had an interesting, fun, almost top 10 song called I Had Too Much to Dream Last Night. You may not remember it, you don't remember the band, I know, but you'll hear that song and say, wait, that's the Electric Prunes. And I always confused it with the Kenny Rogers and the First Edition version of their song called I Just Dropped In to See What Condition My Condition Was In. Probably because they both had so many words in the title. You know, back in the day, songs were like Help, The Twist, Satisfaction, Hey Jude, Respect. All right. So maybe these were one-hit wonders, and maybe they were because their second album was entitled, let me read this because it's called Mass in F minor. And you know what it was? It was a psychedelic Catholic Mass with some of the lyrics in Latin, and you think to yourself, I'm not sure there's a market for that, and there wasn't. They were crushed. However, their song, the choir version of that song on Kyrie Eleison on that album, Mass in F minor, appeared in Easy Rider. Now, if I was going to destroy an artist, I would tell them, do this. Record that Mass in F minor, psychedelic in Latin. Anyway. We're moving on. I just need to tell you, though, Kenny Loggins, you know him, an amazing artist. He's got 5 platinum and 5 gold albums. He's had 10 top 20 singles. He's been nominated for, been nominated for an Oscar, been nominated for Grammys. He is a huge star. But you know what? Everybody has a beginning somewhere. And Kenny Loggins, he played guitar for a while with the Electric Prunes. All right. We have a little more honey left. Let's put it in. Because I need to put in some honey from the Four Tops. That would be the Sugar Pie Honey Bunch that they recorded. And that, of course, was a huge hit. Actually, we ran out of honey. Ran out. Clear out. A huge hit for the Four Tops. And be number 1. It was written by Holland, Dozier, and Holland. And those guys were amazing. They wrote, if you can believe this, over 400 songs. And of those songs, 80 were top 40 hits, 50 were top 20s, 25 were top 10, and 25 were number 1. They wrote Sugar Pie Honey Bunch, and it was a huge hit for the Four Tops. And they needed a follow-up. So they wrote a song, strangely, aggressively, insanely, called It's the Same Old Song. And you know what? It is, in fact, the same old song. It's the same song as I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. If you play them together, the similarities are absolutely remarkable. Holland, Dozier, and Holland, they have written so many songs. Songs like Heat Wave, Band of Gold, Where Did Our Love Go, Baby I Need Your Lovin', Stop in the Name of Love, Roadrunner, Come and Get These Memories, Can I Get a Witness? Well, you get the point. They did a lot of songs. So The Four Tops, they had 24 of their singles that reached the top 40. They have 7 of them were top 10, 2 of them were number 1, and they've had 10 compilations, released 59 singles, and sold 50 million records. I love the Four Tops. They could sing, they could put together an album, could have, Deadly Diseases, and I would have listened to it. The 4 of them, pictured right there, there. The 4 of them stayed together for 40 years. Unusual. Levi Stubbs was suggested many times to leave the group, and he just said, you know what, I just happened to be lucky. I had the most commercial group in the band, but we're brothers. We stayed together for 40 years. Okay, that's it for today, for Song for This Day. And you saw the ingredients that went into this? You know what? I'm not even going to put them on the blender, because if I did, I'd have to sample them. And when you saw what went into that, I don't think I want to sample it. So don't replicate this at home, but listen to these songs. They're all really cool, they're all really great, and they mark a moment in time, both musically and actually. So, thanks for riding along. I'm Ed Walsh, and this has been Song for This Day. We have some other songs on this channel, the LTV YouTube channel, under playlists. Check them out. Songs about songs that have been censored, musically connected. We took West Side Story once and showed you how it was related to the James Gang Funk 49. That was fun too. So, meantime, thanks for riding along. Hope you had as much fun as I did doing this. And in the meantime, happy trails until we meet again. Thanks for watching.